Welcome back to the Sports Marketeer. We're now a month out from the FIFA World Cup in the USA, Mexico, and Canada. France go into this tournament as one of the favourites. They're also a country at a footballing crossroads. The defending finalists of 2022, the world champions of 2018. They qualified for this tournament with a near-perfect record, and they're about to send Didier Deschamps into his 14th and final year as manager, with Zinedine Zidane, the legend himself, already lined up to succeed him. They're going into this tournament led by a captain, Kylian Mbappé, who, as my guest puts it, is unrecognisable from the teenager who lifted the trophy in Moscow 8 years ago. The squad was announced 24 hours ago. Mbappé will captain. Ousmane Dembélé, the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, leads the attack alongside him. There are some genuinely surprising absences, which we'll get into with my guest today. We're going to spend an hour on what this World Cup actually means to France, to its football, to its identity, and the player who's carried more of the country on his shoulders than anyone since Zidane. And to do that, I've got the perfect guest. Julien Laurens is one of the most prolific football journalists working in the English language, on TV with TNT, BBC and ESPN, on radio with RMC, 5 Live and Talksport, and writing for ESPN, of course. He's covered Kylian Mbappé for more than a decade, and on May the 28th, just 12 days before the World Cup kicks off, he publishes Kylian Mbappé, the Definitive Biography, the most comprehensive book yet written on the player who will captain France in the US. Julien, welcome to the Sports Marketeer. Congratulations on the book. Take me back to when you decided to write this. Why now and why you, Julien?
Hello, my friend. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for for talking about the book as well. Like you said, I've been following Kylian since he was 10 or 11 years old, really, when he was still playing for Bondy, before Clairefontaine, before Monaco, before PSG and Real Madrid and everything. And then I was approached to say, like, hey, would you like to embark on this great adventure of writing a book? I'd never really writing a book like as such. I said yes. I probably should not have said yes because it took a long time, man. Long time. It was long hours writing in English as well, so not in my language, so a bit difficult. But we got there in the end. I'm really appreciative of all the people that helped, for the book, all the people that told stories about Kylian from when he was a kid to nowadays, really, until now. And it's been great just to see him as an 11-year-old who was clearly a prodigy at the time, and seeing, what he's become now, and having followed pretty much every step through the career. It's been great. So now I was just really happy to write the book to share that story with everyone.
Yeah. We've spoken about Kylian before. We've known each other for many years, Jules. You've been covering him for so long. Did you find through the research in the book anything that really surprised you? Something maybe you were not expecting about his story?
Not really. I knew him so well already anyway. I remember, and I said that in the acknowledgement of the book, one of my best friends, Charlie, who's Paris born and bred like me, one day I just rang and said, listen, everybody's talking about this kid. He's 11. He plays for Bondy, so north of Paris, where we're from the east. And he said, like, we should go, and next time you're in Paris, we should go and check. So like, yeah. And one time we were together in one weekend, and we went to see him play in a shirt that was far too big for him, like green Bondy shirt. And then we just, after 10 minutes, we knew he was very special. So really, there was nothing surprising. It's great to just grab all those stories and everything that people are talking about, people who knew him well, who played with him when they were like 8, 9, or people who coached him and who were really close to him. And then after that, people who played with him, when he became a pro. But just to gather all those stories and put them together in a nice way of like, look, he was a prodigy. Like you and I have met many before. I've played against when I was a kid, who never made it like him. And yet he made it. Why did he make it like that? The family environment is obviously huge because they were not pushy parents, but they just knew that their son was special and they just want to be along with him all the way to the top. And they knew what they wanted, and they were very clear on what they wanted for Kylian. And then it was down to him really to make it, because we've also seen some kids making their debut at 16, 17, but never really then getting to fulfilling all the potential that we saw and like staying true to all the promises that we saw when they started. But with him, it just got better and better.
Yeah. And Kylian is, generational. He's so unique in that, he fulfilled his ambition at such a young age. And one of the lines in the book, I mentioned it earlier, that really stood out is, you say that today he's unrecognizable from the young man who won the World Cup in 2018. I think that's a pretty strong claim. Can you sort of unpack that for me? What's changed in his life, and how has he changed?
Yeah, I mean, there's something that you see as a thread, even through the book, but when you talk to people who spend a lot of time with him since he was a kid. One guy who was a Bondi, his first coach, but very close as well to the Mbappé family. He was a bit of a babysitter at the time, who taught him a lot of things about football, who said he was always like a sponge. So you would say one thing to him and he would never forget it, and he would do it straight away on the pitch. School was a little bit different because he was really bright, but probably too bright for the kind of school system that we had in France at the time. He had super high IQ, and then maybe didn't really find his place in class. So school was a bit different, but certainly he always had that. He could still remember stuff at museum that he visited when he was 6-7 years old. He had this incredible photographic memory too. So like that sponge. And 2018 was like that. 2018, he was this up and coming kid that many people around the world just never heard of it. If you were not watching Ligue 1 at the time and Monaco, you would not have heard of him. And he was there quite quiet considering how he is now as the captain and the leader of this team, but he was still only 19, but just taking everything in like a sponge, everything, what Pogba could say, or Deschamps, or Lloris, what happened with the media, what happened on the pitch, off the pitch, on how to be for 5 weeks when you are in a closed bubble like any national teams are during competitions like that, to take it all in really and learn from it. And then he became the captain of the national team, the leader of this group. And now he's obviously very different to what he was 8 years ago. Even if he hadn't been the captain and somebody else had been picked by Deschamps when Lloris retired, he would still be a very different guy than he was 8 years ago, which is normal. We all are very different now than 8 years ago. But for him, even more, there's this kind of like sponge quality is very important, I think, in his whole path and his whole career.
Yeah. He's had a tricky season at Real Madrid. Obviously, there's been some fireworks recently. I mean, it's one of those clubs where everything is either going spectacularly well or it's going spectacularly bad. And it feels to be the latter right now. What is his mindset like going into this tournament? How important is it? He is Mr. World Cup to so many people. Does the World Cup almost offer a respite from all the drama that he's been experiencing at club level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if respite is the right word. Certainly, you would not see it like that because it's not that he's not phased. I mean, he understands frustrations of fans, etc. But like he always says, he can't change people's opinions by saying something. The only thing he can do to change their opinion is scoring more goals, winning more trophies. And this season, he'd be the first one to put his hand up and said, I failed because I should have led Real Madrid to win trophies, and I didn't. And we didn't as a team, as a club. So that he would always, I think, admit and take responsibility for. World Cup is a little bit different because it's your national team, it's your country, it's your people. Usually the people who are with you in the squad are, certainly for some of them, your best friends. So if you look at his relationship with Marcus Thuram, they were together at Clairefontaine, although Marcus is a year above, a year older. But at Clairefontaine, you go, your first year is the second year of the year above, basically. So they've known each other since Kylian was 12 and Marcus 13. Ousmane Dembélé and Kylian have been great friends for many, many years now. So it's a different dynamic, really, when you're with the national team. But he sees the World Cup as, I think, the pinnacle of everything. Yes, the Champions League is an objective. The Ballon d'Or is an objective. Scoring as many goals as possible, winning as many things, great. But the World Cup is something else. And I think when you've already tasted winning it and then making another final 4 years later or 3.5 years later, being very close to winning again, you want it more. He knows exactly the kind of impact that this would have on the country, on his career, on his reputation, on his standing and what he means to French football in history. Platini, Zidane, Thierry, Copa, whoever you want. But also for the future with Real Madrid and then with France for the next Euros and the next World Cup and maybe another one after that, etc., etc. So he knows how important. And again, this time, like I say in the book, the big difference with the last Euros, with the last World Cup is the armband. And that makes a massive difference because even more now he feels he's on a mission.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a little bit more later on about what the legacy could be of winning another World Cup for Deschamps, for this generation, for this team. But we're speaking less than 24 hours after the squad was announced, Deschamps' final 26. Any surprises for you, Jules? Anything that leapt out for you? Camavinga, people are talking about quite a lot.
Yeah, I think Eduardo can be disappointed, must be disappointed. He has to be as well because he had that place. He was in the last squad in March for the 2 friendlies against Brazil and Colombia. So he was there. And for Deschamps, but also it's true for many other national team head coaches. Usually when you are in the March squads, in the last international break squad before a World Cup or Euros, 90 or 95% of those players are still there when the squad for the tournament is announced. So I think he can feel that frustration. Sure, Kolo Muani is the other one. Obviously, it was very clear that if Deschamps decided to go with 9 forwards, especially after the KTK injury, then there will be 1 less midfielders, especially if he was then going with the 8 centre back or the 8 defenders. So it was just a case of it's nothing against Camavinga or nothing against Kolo Muani. It was clearly Mateta or Kolo Muani for the last spot for the forwards. And I think Deschamps felt that, yes, despite the injury, Mateta has had a better season than Kolo Muani at club level, for sure. 14 goals against 3, for example, or 13 against 4. But also in terms of profile of what Mateta can be for this national team, not as a starter, obviously, but coming off the bench, is better for the team because we don't really have a profile like that compared to Kolo Muani, who's quite similar to other forwards that we already have in the squad. For Camavinga, from the moment that Deschamps took only 5 midfielders, there was no room. He was always the 6th one on the list. So if Deschamps decided to go with 6 midfielders, then Camavinga would have made it and Lacroix or Mateta would have missed out. From the moment I decided that 5 is enough to play in a 4-2-3-1 formation, so you only really need 2 midfielders each game, 5 is enough, more than 6, then the 5 that he picked, and like he said again in his when he was announcing the squad on Thursday night, from Tchouaméni, Rabiot, Kanté, Kone, and Zaire Emery, those are not debatable anyway. You could look at anywhere you want, those 5 are nailed on, and they were nailed on for weeks now. So Camavinga misses out because he wanted to take Lacroix and have another defender there, fair enough, another centre-back, and also because he felt that the Mateta profile was very important for the squad. So that explained the construction really of the squad of 26 with the 3 goalkeepers. Then that leaves you 23 outfield players. So if it feels like those 5 in midfield, and then the 9 and the 6 makes the right number.
Yeah. Deschamps said it's a squad, not necessarily the 26 best players, and he said it's about balance and how the team comes together. Do you think that sums up his philosophy, sort of 12 years into his kind of legacy?
Yeah, he's always said that. Yeah, I remember him many times saying to us, "Don't forget that this is," and it's the same again for any national team. Maybe not so much smaller countries, maybe, but for the big countries where you've got a lot of depth, a lot of choices that you can make, a lot of options. It's not about picking the 23 best. It's about picking the 23 or 26 now. The 26 that will be living together for 6, 7, 8 weeks in that kind of bubble with not much contact with the outside, but live well with each other. We often say in France, we've got this thing that is not always true, but we say, the squad lives well together. They're happy together. And sometimes we've said it and it was not really the case, but this is one of the keys of winning a World Cup or Euros is if you have tensions within the camp along those 6 weeks or 7 weeks, it will explode at some point. It's inevitable. However, if you've picked maybe somebody who will be your 26, the guy who's never going to play, not even 1 second, but every day the guy is happy. Every day he's just encouraging everybody. Every day he's just a good teammate. He's there. You can ask him anything. He will do it. Take him more than this number 10 who's had a great season. But you know that if he doesn't start or if he doesn't come on, he'll be a bit sulky. And if he starts sulking, then that might have an influence on somebody else. His close mates in the squad, how would they feel if their mates is not playing? Things like that. And Deschamps is the master. We can debate on his football style and, what he could have done differently through the years. But there's one thing that is the master at is this, picking the right squads, picking the right vibes and who would get on with who and who would not get on with who. And the one time that maybe he got it slightly wrong, although it was not just on him, is when he brought back Benzema in 2021. Not that Karim was the problem at all, but that at the last minute, I think, changed the dynamic within the squad. Plus, it was COVID. Plus, it was a weird Euros, and it never clicked really with our squad. But usually, his squads are really, really always pretty good and clicked all the time.
Yeah. And thinking back to the pre-Deschamps era, France had more than their fair share of issues within the squads, infighting. I'm thinking 2010 South Africa, the infamous incident, with Dominic and Evra and Gallas and everyone there, and Nelka, of course. Is there something about the dynamics of the French team? It's been hailed as, when the French team succeeds, is hailed as a triumph for a multicultural republic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when it struggles, multiculturalism also comes up as well. And is there something about the racial dynamics, the cultural dynamics of France that means it's very important to create a happy and harmonized camp?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And you put it so nicely as well. It's exactly that. The time that we failed from 2010 to even before that, 08, 04, 02, when we were the holders of the World Cup, of course. And even to some extent, that 2021 2020 Euros moved to 2021 was when there was no unity within the squads, but when the country was not united either by this team, if you see what I mean. Because the country could feel, oh yeah, we're all behind them, but actually, that not everybody is behind the team because they're him or there's them, and we don't like the fact that there's clans, or there's too many black players, or there's too many this and too many that, and that you could feel it anywhere. And right now, it's a very challenging environment back home too, politically, socially. So we need this team to just gather everybody together, to unite everybody together. And then, yes, they will have a chance of winning it, because they will feel it. Even far, far away, when we'll be in the US, we will feel what is being said at home, what is being felt at home. So that's very important. And you're right, when you win, it's all great, and we're all equal, and we're all the same country. And when we don't win, but look, they're not really French, or are they French, or this is not France, and this is this, and this is that. And that's the beauty of it when you win, and it's the sadness of it when you don't, because at the end of the day, we are all still the same country. Whether we win or lose, we win together, we lose together, it's the same. But obviously, politically, in the kind of recuperation that you can have, is very different. And Kylian is very much aware of that. Deschamps is very much aware of that. And I think the players more and more, especially with the rise of the National Front, and the Rassemblement National and the far right in France, more and more, I think players feel like, okay, this is our mission. The mission is to take this team, but through this team, the whole country united to the top. That will help. Everything else will create more chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. Deschamps has done a great job in keeping things harmonious, but it hasn't always been plain sailing, has it? There was the Benzema fallout, as you said. There was a situation with Pogba. Making Mbappé captain had its, detractors as well. There was riots in 2023. There was the booing of the anthem as well. How do you measure Deschamps' handling of this constant political pressure on this team? Or has he just been the one who happened to be there?
He's been amazing. I have to say, he's been amazing. The only one we could look at really outside of the style of football, because again, his conservatism at times brought a lot of criticism to him. And me, the first one, I thought he should have gone after Euro 2024, for example, in Germany, where yes, we reached the semi-final. And again, that's a very positive outcome. You the last four, you lost to Spain, the eventual winners, all of that. But the football was rubbish. The football was horrendous through the whole competition. Even the players were like texting me saying like, we can't bear this anymore. So I'm glad that he's changed, and the football should be much better. I mean, if it's not better with the players that he has in this tournament, it will never be better. But at least he shows that he could adapt and change a little bit, and maybe he should have done so a bit earlier in his tenure. But apart from that, from where the team was when he took over in that summer 2012, after the years of Dominic that you mentioned, and there's that Netflix documentary that's just been out on that, the strike and the what happened in the bus in South Africa. But even after that, Laurent Blanc in that 2012 Euros, things were still poor back then, even with Blanc at the helm. So even without Dominic, to pacify everything like he did, to get this team going again, well aware that the talent was there, obviously, and that's why he stayed so long. He stayed 14 years because, one, he had He had results and trophies and finals and all of this. One of the most successful era in not just French football history for the national team, but any national teams combined. Really, when you think about semi-final, finals, semi-finals, finals, all of that, it's pretty wonderful. Even if in the end he would have only won one World Cup and one Nations League, but it could have been a second World Cup, there could have been a Euros, there could have been another Nations League, could have been a lot more, obviously, but you can't win everything. But for that, he's really been brilliant. The way he's inspired these squads, those players, the younger generation, the older generation, the relationship with their fans, with the media, with even politically, he's such a smart guy anyway. You know, you can't kid him. You can't. He's just a step above and step ahead of everybody always. He's just a great guy. And I think it won't be easy for Zidane to take over, sure, but then he's Zidane, and Zidane is just like, the greatest. So it would be very interesting to see what happens. I think it would be quite smooth, although they're very different personalities, very different people, very different players, and very different managers too. But I think Deschamps has done a lot of the hard work for then Zidane to arrive and say, okay, let me just put my mark on this squad. There's an unbelievable squad, really, in terms of talent.
Yeah. Incredible talent, and France always seem to produce so much talent. Looking at sort of the two French generations that have won the World Cup, so 98, of which Zidane, Deschamps, they were there. Incredible triumph of a multicultural nation as well, a great moment for the country. And 2018, which is very much associated with Mbappé, and there's not a lot of remaining members from that squad now. From the outside, they look like very different teams winning in very different countries. But from the inside, is it a similar story? How is the 2018? We know the 98 team is very fondly remembered, very affectionately remembered in France and beyond. Does the 2018 team carry that same level of affection as well?
No, you're right. Maybe not as much. One, because 98 was on home soil too, which I think it's a World Cup win times 10, inevitably, compared to winning it in Russia. And yeah, people were watching on television and then went down the streets, parties and everything. And then we had that kind of a bus parade that was a bit rushed and a bit messed up, really, compared to the one in 98. But to win the World Cup in your own country, there's nothing will ever top that in your career, ever. It's impossible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, this was a generation that was a bit older than the one that won in 2018, for example. If you think about Zidane in 98 and Kylian in 2018 and where they were at in their career and their age, very different worlds. For 2018, don't forget, we also had the final of the Euros in 2016 in Paris, at home, at the Stade de France in Saint-Denis. So this team was very close of winning before. And 2016 was very, very useful for 2018 when they got to the final, saying, hey, remember what happened 2 years ago? Let's make sure that nothing like that happens again today. In 98, yes, they had the semi-final in 96 at the Euros in England. But this is a generation that missed out on the 94 World Cup in the most incredible circumstances of being knocked out by Israel, when we just needed a point, and Bulgaria then, when we needed 1 point in 2 games at home against Israel and Bulgaria, and we lost both. The second game against Bulgaria, and the last second is the famous Ginola-Houllier kind of argument.
Yeah.
So for a long time, before the 98 World Cup, there's my generation, for example, I was born in 1980, who never seen really or can't remember France at the World Cup because they were not there in 1990, not there in 1994 either. So for my generation, you went from no World Cups at all, not even playing in, let alone, not being in the Panini album, nothing, just not. You watch other teams on television, to finally being there, not just being there, is in your own country, and you go and win it. So that, again, can never be matched, impossible. But 2018 was different. It was a different dynamic. You had players like Pogba, like Kylian, like Lloris. You had a bit of everything, and yet the kind of black blanc beurre, multicultural win was there, not as much as 1998, because 1998 we needed it badly. The whole country just needed it so much. We'd never done anything sports-wise as such, like, rugby or even tennis. The last time that somebody won a Grand Slam in tennis was Yannick Noah in 1983. We'd never won anything. Even Formula One, it's been a long time since Prost won something. You could look at every sport. Handball was our sport at the time. So that was a liberation. That was an explosion. 1998 was, again, we will always be much special than anything else. But 2018 was like, okay, 20 years on, there's something in there, something, and let's go again then. Unfortunately, there was never the impact socially, especially that 1998 had.
Yeah. And to follow it in Euro 2000 with that incredible win, the golden goal final, that created a sense of a dynastic generation, a golden generation. And this was before Spain did their 3 tournaments on the bounce. And I think people remember that France team being utterly dominant.
Yeah.
If you look at the current France team, you mentioned so many times, the talent is off the scale, probably up there with the team at the start of the millennium as well. Is there a sense in France that maybe this team, despite the World Cup win, despite being finalists in 2022, despite reaching all those finals and semi-finals, the Nations League win, is there a sense that they haven't quite cashed in on their talent as much as they should have?
Maybe. Again, I remember having this conversation during the last Euros in 2024 in Germany, where Deschamps got away with the poor style of football because he got the results and because they went to the semi-finals. And yeah, again, from what I said, so if you look, okay, 2014, it's a quarterfinal of the World Cup. This is Deschamps' first competition in Brazil. You lose to Germany 1-0 in a game that you could easily have taken to extra time, and then Germany go and win it. So you lost to the eventual winners, right? 2016 is your Euros. You're back home. You've got a great generation. So a bit too early for Kylian, but Pogba is already there. Griezmann is there. Not far from the peak of his 2018 would be peak Griezmann, but 2016 is already amazing Griezmann. Everywhere you're really good. You've got the home support. You used to the final to Portugal and that Eder goal in extra time in a game where you hit the post and you should have won. You don't win it, but this is a final. 2018, okay, the triumph. 2020 is that Euros where that's the one and only time where Deschamps took a little step back and thought, okay, they know now they're World Cup champions. They know how to handle the pressure, the expectations, the environment. He took a step back and regretted it straight away because that was a bit of chaos. So 2020/2021, difficult. 2022 is the final. 2024 is the semi-final. It's hard to do better than that. Yeah, of course, you could have won 2016. Sure, you were really close. Probably deserved to win it. 2022 is that Kolo Muani v Martinez shot. If he scores that, you win another World Cup. And then, so maybe they could have won more, sure. But you would look at those 14 years. And if you think about quarterfinal, final, win, last 16, okay. Final, semi-final, and then this one, we don't know yet. It's pretty amazing still.
Yeah. And what would a 2026 win mean for this group? Is it the completion of this dynasty? Does it put the cap on a true golden generation?
Yeah, although like you said, there's been a lot of changes already. Lucas Digne is the only one with Deschamps who was still there in 2014. From the 2018 squad, obviously, Kylian is still there, and N'Golo Kante, who's made the squad, is still there too. But you don't have that many left either. Lucas Hernandez, and then I think this is it, maybe. Even from 2022, I think there's only 12 left from 2022. Something like that. Because Olise was nowhere near as good enough 2 years ago, for example. Because Mateta was not good enough 2 years ago either. Because Zaire Emery was 16 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago, and then only 18 2 years ago. You could look down through the squads and you can understand, wow, even in the space of 2 years, look at the amount of talented players that have burst onto the scenes that now are just guaranteed either starter for this team or in the squads. But I think for Deschamps, who's already the third person to have won the World Cup as a player and as a manager with Beckenbauer and Zagallo. If he was to win another World Cup, he'd be obviously at the top of the mountain. Nobody could even come close. I don't even want to hear debate about, could somebody else be considered as the greatest national team head coach ever? No, it's a simple no. If he wins this one already, I think he's top 3 anyway for all the results, and we mentioned all those the outcomes of those big competitions. But if he was to win another World Cup and go 3 finals in a row, which has been done before, by the way, the Germans did that three in final, but didn't win any of the three. If Deschamps was to win two out
The
of three, or
Brazilians
even
as
one
well.
out of three. Yeah, and the Brazilians as well.
94,
Right.
98, 2002.
Yeah, in 2002. So, you know, 2 wins for them out of 3, pretty special too. If Deschamps was to do the same, although obviously Brazilian didn't do it with the same head coach, if Deschamps was to do that, I think he'd be the greatest for national team head coaches for sure, one of the greatest of managers of all time. Sure, even if, of course, club level and international level is very different. But still, he was already very good when he was a club manager before too. So it would be that. For Kylian, it would take him on another level, on another planet already, for sure. More than a Dembele, who would do obviously 2 as well, or N'Golo, or Lucas. But because it's Kylian, it would be something else. And even for his own legacy within, where do you rank him? Among the greatest French players of all time. If Kylian wins another World Cup and he stars in the World Cup, he would be above Zidane, above Thierry, above Platini and Copa, who are really the only 4 now that can compete with him in terms of top 5 rankings.
Yeah. Sticking with Mbappé, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when Deschamps gave him the captaincy after Lloris retired, was this more than a football decision, or was this a statement about modern France, you know, the son of immigrants from Bondy, the boy from the banlieue, you know, the most globally famous Frenchman of his generation? Nevertheless, he wasn't the obvious choice, I think, at the time, in terms of some people expected Deschamps to maybe pick a player more in his image or someone more defensive, perhaps. But reading your book, do you think Mbappé is comfortable with being that symbol in terms of, you know, being the boy from the suburbs of Paris, you know?
So to answer your question about him, 100%. I mean, he dreamed of it since he was like 3 years old anyway. He always wanted to be the captain. He always wanted to be the leader. He always wanted to have that responsibility. So that, he would never shy away from that. He was welcoming it. And I remember the story where he calls his parents and said, he picked me. And I think both Wilfried and Faiza started thinking, okay, you know, things are going to get even tougher now, just so you know. And he was like, don't worry, I'm ready for it. And he is ready. He was ready. He's ready. I think he's a great captain. But his mom and dad knew how heavy this could be and how difficult this could be, because now you can't do anything wrong. Before, as a player, you can make a mistake or two. It can happen to all, even the greats, no problem. As a captain, irreproachable. And when he wasn't, at the start of the captaincy, for example, remember before we played Italy in the Nations League in September of the first season, the first full season he was captain, and he felt like he was back at the Parc des Princes after leaving PSG to go to Real Madrid, and he said, well, I don't really care what people think, and if they, you know, what kind of welcome I get, something like that. He said, I can't remember exactly. Not the right thing to do, and not the right thing to say. And after that, there was a bit of a storm about what he said and what that means. As the France captain, you don't care about what the France fans feel, the stuff like that. He was going through a tough time at Real Madrid for the first season. It was difficult, and I think he realized, okay, don't worry, I won't make, again, to go back to that sponge image, I won't make that mistake ever again, and he will never make it. So from his point of view, he welcomed him. He wanted it. For Deschamps, it was both an easy one and a tough one, because so there was only really Varane was retiring as well. So if Rafa hadn't retired, I think probably Deschamps would have given Varane the captaincy. But Rafa decided to go. He was very close to Lloris. It felt even at 29, it was the right time. It was a lot of injuries, no problem. Really, it was only Griezmann and Mbappé. It was between them two. The easy way is that Kylian at the time was probably 24, 25. Grizzy was already towards the end of his career, 32, I think, at the time. So you would pick the younger one that could be the captain for the next 10 years anyway. It was easy on that level. Mm-hmm. You knew that the one who would not be picked, probably the one that could make your life harder in a way, because it would be more of a storm if it was Kylian. If you didn't give it to Kylian, I think it would have blown up completely, not because Kylian would have created problems, but because people would thought, hang on a minute, how come you don't give the captaincy to the best player, in the world, maybe? You know, why? What is that? And I think then politically, it would have been difficult for Deschamps, because people would have said, hang on, what's wrong about the son of immigrants from the Paris banlieue, suburbs? What's wrong with that? And I think that was also part of his thinking in a way. Even subconsciously, I think he knew that was going to happen. He knew that if it was not Griezmann would be sad, and he was sad, and he struggled to get over it 100%. It took him a long time. And then once he was finally over it, he decided to retire from the national team too. But it would probably be easier for him to say to Griezmann, I'm sorry, it's not you, it's Kylian, than the other around. So it was both easy and hard. For me, it was an easy one. I never thought he would give it to Griezmann and not Mbappé anyway. But he had issues, obviously. When it's like that, when you have to pick between two guys who both believe they should be the captain, because Griezmann was convinced it was going to be him. He thought, I tick all the boxes. I've been here for that long. I've won all of this. I've achieved all of this. Me and Deschamps are like father and son, which is true, which was true before that decision. He was convinced it was, and maybe that was the reason why he felt that he was falling from the top to the bottom, and that was the high fall, because he was convinced he was going to get the armband. And in the end, I think it made sense to give it to Kylian, as much as that created problems with Griezmann.
Yeah. And I think we'll see in the US and Mexico and Canada this summer, how good a decision that was and how significant he can be as a leader as well as this talismanic spearheading, striker as well. You've obviously written this definitive biography. It is definitive, but at the same time, it can't be definitive because, there are chapters still to be written, I'm sure. There's going to be one after the World Cup, I'm sure, and you're going to need to do an update at some point. Yeah. What's the sentence you'd most want to be true by July if you could write about Kylian Mbappé? What are you hoping to envision for his future and how things go this summer?
I mean, obviously winning it is, the ideal outcome. Not just for the book, but as a French person, for this team, for Deschamps, who I really, really like. We were together again a month ago for something for FIFA, and we had a lovely chat. And whether, again, you like him or not, whether you like his style of football or not, and again, it's not my cup of tea. He often reminds me how critical I've been sometimes with him, and that's fine. He knows it's part of the game. It's part of the job too. But the most important, I think, he's always cared. He always cared about this team, about these players, about the national team, more than a Dominic, probably more even than a Laurent Blanc, maybe even more than a Jacquet who won in 98 or Le Maire who won in 2000 and those kind of guys. There's no doubt about that. And he loves this team so much, and he loves his country, and he loved being at the helm of these great generations that he had, obviously. But I think that was very important. So for him, I would love him if he won it again, sure. For Kylian, more than the goals he can score, more than whether it's him lifting that trophy on July 19th or not in New Jersey. And I think he knows that already. He's well aware. The interview that he gave to Vanity Fair just before, like at the start of, or mid-May was, if you want to read it, already you see the kind of how responsible it is in the role that he will have in this World Cup. For him, the World Cup started already with that interview where he talked about politics, where he talked about his job, his role, his responsibilities, what he stands for, how important it is to have those values and to all pull in the same direction. Not just the squad that he will be leading. He'll be the first one coming out of that tunnel for warm-up and for when the game starts to lead the team, but as a country as a whole. And I think that's where I want him to shine more than on the pitch, more than what he can do because we all know. I think he's going to score between 6 and 10 goals. He will lead France far. How far? I don't know yet. If it's the final, if it's to win it, if it's a semi-final, anything can always happen in football. We know that, you and I. But what I want him to shine is that he's the way we represent this country and this team and this shirt and this armband, this number 10 that is so significant in French football history, not just in French football history, in football history everywhere, but even more since he's taken that shirt when he was so young and people thought, really? You're going to be the number 10? And then how well he's carried that shirt, really. So for me, that's the most important, more than anything else, is how he will carry himself as this team leader.
Yeah. And is it doubly important given that in 2024, you had Marine Le Pen's party becoming the largest single party in the National Assembly? And, this French team now, the squad is, the overwhelming majority of the squad now is North African heritage.
Yeah.
And Mbappé has been very careful in what he says, but he has spoken up before the second round of voting in 2024, and he got hammered, I think, from the right of politics in France. What is the relationship between this team and this country right now? Is everyone behind this team, and is everyone behind Mbappé, or is it a more complicated picture than that?
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated picture. Unfortunately, it should be straightforward. It should be, yes, everybody behind them. They are our team. They are all of us, really, because again, when you think about how France was built as people, as a country, as a civilization, all of that, as a community, it's all from different backgrounds, all from mixed heritage, everywhere, all of us. So I don't know why now suddenly people are trying to divide us again, which is, again, not new. It happened before and it will happen again, I'm sure. But it's scary. And that's why I go back to your previous question about, why I want Kylian, where I'm waiting for him in this tournament, is that these teams and this squad and this manager, this head coach and this captain know too well that if they fail at the World Cup, let's say, failing for me would be not reaching at least the semi-final. So if you lose in the quarters, last 16, round of 32, I mean, even worse, or even not make it, they will make it. But that the repercussions back home are going to be terrible, literally terrible. And this is what is at stake here. Of course, there's a World Cup at stake, another one, a third star on the shirt, everything you want, fantastic. But socially, politically, not doing well in this tournament, I think will create a bigger gap between people within France, between people who come from, the banlieue or multicultural backgrounds, to people who are against that, and the far right, and Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella and all those kind of people who will use the failure of France in a way of not doing well at the World Cup. That's all they're waiting for. Trust me. They might say it differently, and they might say we want France to win. They don't, because politically they will just take that with them and say, well, you see, we can't do this and we can't trust that and we can't have faith in those people and this and that. And those players have all that weight to carry on their shoulders, not just to win on the pitch because we want France to win as a football nation, but also because they have to win to bridge that gap that the far right has created within our own people, our own communities. And that's what's at stake here. Far more importantly than football, when you think about it. And it won't last, obviously, because if we win it, we will be united again, like in 2018, for a little bit. And then those cracks are going to appear again, obviously, because that's the story of a country anyway. But at least if they could go and win this, or even just do well to start with, then I think that gap and those cracks will be papered over a little bit. And that will be a start. That it won't solve everything, but that will be a start. And that's the most important for me. But that's heavy pressure to carry for all those boys.
It sounds it. Yeah, and it seems remarkable that a team could have so much political pressure on them and all the racial dynamics in the country at the moment. You speak to a lot of the players. Do you get a sense that they are fully aware of it, or do you feel that they try and shut it out, or do they just focus on football?
No, I think this is a generation. But again, this is this generation now, right? In 1998, nobody would have said anything. Not Zidane, not Deschamps, not Thuram but he was at the beginning of his journey, really. Now Lilian is outspoken on racism and inequality between people of color and white people, all of that in France, but all around the world. And not surprisingly, Marcus, obviously his son, and Kefren, the younger one, who's not there, but Marcus has taken over the role of his dad, and also speaks out, and really, really well. But this generation is not to stay quiet. Never. They won't. Not especially with a captain like Kylian, who will encourage them to talk. If Koundé wants to talk, he can. If you don't want to talk, and that's what Deschamps said a little bit on Thursday night as well. He said, I would not do it. I would not go after the Rassemblement National and the far right like Kylian did or Marcus did before. Because he's that 98 generation. It's a very different mentality. The mentality right now, they have no patience, no time to waste. It's the famous line that Kylian said when he was starting at Monaco. Don't talk to me about age. If I'm good enough, I'm old enough. If I deserve to play, I play. Whether I'm 16, 17, 18, 19. It's the same now. If they have something on their mind, something they don't like, they would say. And so they should. It's a good thing. The 98 generation, or our generation, would not have said anything. They would just play football, and focus on the football, and that's it. Now they're ready for it. And I think they are ready to fight too. You come after them, then they're ready to respond. And I think they respond on the pitch, sure. And they know this is the best they can do, of course, because they are footballers. They're not politicians. They're not, public speakers and things like that. They are first and foremost footballers. So they will respond on the pitch first, but they also know they will have a voice off the field, and they will use it if they feel like they need to.
Yeah. And I get a sense that as a journalist, as a person, as a fan, you really welcome the fact that they speak their mind, this generation of footballers.
Yeah, I mean, as a son of immigrants, as an immigrant now here in the UK, with my children being worried after elections, saying like, would they send you back? If reform wins, I feel it, and I understand it even more than ever, probably. And the players I talk to, I said to them, if you want to, I'll give you a platform. Everybody will give you a platform. The media I work for, all the media, it doesn't matter who it is really, as long as you feel safe in a safe environment to speak out in a free environment. If you want to take to social media, take it. If you want me to help you, I'll help you. Anything. And I think there's more and more who are like that too. The players ready to speak out, the media or the journalists or PR people, whatever, ready to say, okay, before it was risky, now you go for it. And I think this is the big difference as well. And this is why I also think that the younger generation back home really believe in this current players generation, because they can identify themselves to them.
Yeah, totally. And we see the data all the time. These sort of Gen Z, Gen Alpha football fans, they want to know what these players stand for, what they believe in, if their values chime with theirs. And I think Mbappé, these guys are such a great example of that. Let's fast forward to what comes next after the World Cup, and it's a big moment. It's Zizou finally coming in as the France manager. It's been an open secret for a long time, hasn't it, that he's been waiting for this job. He's obviously got so much in his back catalogue, 3 Champions Leagues with Real Madrid, of course, the headbutt in Berlin, the 1998 hero and icon, Marseille-born, son of an Algerian immigrants as well. As a footballing appointment, it feels like the obvious choice. Are these players too young to idolize Zidane and remember him as a player? Because it always used to make me smile whenever someone would go to Real Madrid and say, Zidane was my hero growing up. And I thought, well, he was everyone's hero growing up. He was that good. Do you think these guys are going to absolutely love playing under him?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like you said, you're right. It's the obvious choice. He'd been waiting a long time, for this, because he didn't want to take any other job. That's the one job he wanted after Real Madrid. And we just didn't know when Deschamps would stop. And Zidane was never going to interfere with the French Federation to say, hey, come on, tell him to go now and I'm next. He was never going to do that. Deschamps and Zidane are not the best friends. They never were when they were playing together. They had respect for each other, whether it was at Juve or with the national team. But they haven't stayed friends. They would not go on holidays together or stuff like that. But they still have a lot of respect for each other, I think. And I think Deschamps appreciated the fact that Zidane just waited. And yes, sometimes it's a bit annoying because we kept asking Deschamps, and Deschamps knew that Zidane was there waiting. And it's a big shadow to be waiting for you to move on, kind of thing. But he's the right choice for it. There's no doubt. Even when he was at Real Madrid, I always thought he had the qualities to be a national team head coach more than a club coach, in a way, if you see what I mean. Because it's not so much about the tactics, although he's a good tactician, better than what people make him out to be. But he's a lot about, vibes and feelings and man management. And I remember interviewing him not a long time ago, maybe just after the second stint at Real Madrid finished, so 3 Champions League in a row. And after that, and he said to me, listen, I'm not going to tell Luka Modric how to play football, how to make a pass, how to control the ball, right? Luka Modric knows that already. However, what I can do is put Luka Modric in the best environment to thrive, in the best position to give his best. So he doesn't miss a pass. He doesn't miss a first touch. He doesn't miss a chance. He sees the game. That's what I can do. The pass, okay, maybe, I'm Zidane and I had a great career, but Luka Modric doesn't need me to know when to pass the ball or, how to control the ball. But all the thing outside of this, how I prepare him for the game and, what kind of situation I put him in the game, that I can do. I can have an influence on that. And for that, national team is perfect for him So he had to wait a long time. He's very excited. He's very happy, obviously. Even if it's not official, it's all sorted. It's been sorted for weeks now. And to your first question, he was one of Kylian's idol growing up. And yeah, Kylian is a bit different because he was so obsessed with football from the age of 3 or something. There's this great story that is well known now that I say in the book as well, but I think that many people would have known. When he's 10 and he goes to the barbers in Bondy and he said to the barber, I want the Zidane haircut. So the guy's like, what? What's the Zidane haircut? He goes, well, no hair in the middle, just a little bit on the side here. Not realizing that it's not Zidane haircut, it's just the way Zidane's hair were. Like he was bald here, bald patch. And then, so everybody was laughing at the barbers and said, no, we can't make that for you. But so I think a lot of that generation, because it's Zidane. If he'd been maybe another player from the 98 generation, without the same career, I don't know, let's say somebody like Candela or Bogossian or Diomed even. Like they were good players, very good players. Obviously, they won the World Cup, not as a starter, but still part of that squad. Them would be different. But Zidane is the greatest ever that we've had in France, or the top 3 if you want, really. So yeah, I still think there would be that sense of admiration towards him from the squads, that respect. I remember when Laurent Blanc took over at PSG, and Laurent Blanc was a great player before, but as a coach, hadn't done it really. He won the league at Bordeaux, and that was it. And he's coming into this hugely egocentric PSG dressing room, Ibra and Thiago Silva and all of that. And the first thing he said to the squad, he said, okay, let me ask you one question before we start. First day in, who's won the World Cup here? Nobody said anything. He goes, okay, I'm the only one. So you're going to listen to what I say and do what I said. And that was it. And that's how he won the respect from Ibrahimovic to Thiago Silva to Lavezzi to Verratti to all those guys. And I think Zidane probably doesn't need to say that, but you get the idea that what I'm saying is that even if they don't know Zidane, he's going to walk in and say, okay, who can match my CV? Nobody. Let's go.
Yeah. I believe the kids these days call it aura. He's got a absolutely flawless aura. And speaking of the haircut, Jules, that's what I did 20 years ago. I got the Zidane cut. I haven't looked back since. It's worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, I can say, well done, my friend.
Thank you. Back to the World Cup. The one fixture that really leapt out to me for France in the draw was France-Senegal. Brought back memories of 2002. Everyone expected that France team, the golden generation, to go to that tournament. They had problems with Zidane being injured and so on, but
yeah,
to have a good tournament, they were the rock star team of that generation, and of course they had a terrible tournament. And then you have the colonial elements underneath it as well in terms of France Senegal. So it's a fascinating fixture, isn't it? And Senegal have come a long way in those 20 years as well. They were great back in 2022. 24 years later, they are a very accomplished international side now. How do you see that game going for France, and how do you feel it's going to pan out for France in this tournament?
Yeah, I think it's great to start like that. You're right, for all the reasons that you mentioned, all the history between the two countries, through the colonies, of course, but also the independence, and then the relationship still between the two countries. Huge Senegalese community, in France, obviously, some players who could have played for the two countries in both squads. So very special, I think, in the rapport between the two countries and the two teams, sure, of course. Even back home and in Senegal, if it's playing against your brothers or your cousins, if you want, which is always a bit strange because you know each other so well. There's a lot of respect for each other, but you also want to beat each other and win against the other guy, especially being the first game in that group. If you win it, it's a very strong start towards top spot in that group, with Norway coming next up for both of them. So it's a massive game, maybe even bigger than 2002 in a way, because like you said, Senegal are better now than they were in 2002 on the back of winning AFCON. They should win it, but they have won it. And being the best probably African team of the last 10 years with Morocco. So huge game, like loaded with history and significance, in a way. And it's tough. It's a tough opponent because you also, as much as you would want to win it because you would set up really well for topping the group, it's just you can't afford to lose it, that's for sure. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a 1-1 draw where both teams kind of observe each other a lot and just be happy with that 1 point. And then you go into your second game with a bit of pressure, sure, because you haven't won your first game and you would expect Norway to beat Iraq in their first game and have 3 points. So that could be an interesting dynamic. But yeah, it would be fascinating for sure.
Yeah. We're almost there, Julien. I love talking to you about France. I love talking to you about Mbappé. I think you're such a great expert in this area.
Thank you, man.
However, we are 2 weeks away from a pretty big club game as well. And I can't let you go without asking you about Arsenal PSG. 2 teams very close to your heart.
Yeah.
2 teams very close to your household. Hopefully it won't be too split on the day.
It is already.
Surely, I mean, everyone is saying that PSG have all the weapons. They've been sensational again this season. They've got all the weapons to do what they need to do to win second consecutive Champions League. Do you agree with that? Or do you think Arsenal have a pretty good chance here as well?
I think it would be tighter than what a lot of people are thinking or predicting, really, because I think if there's one team that can trouble PSG in the way they play and the way they move the ball and all their rotations and this famous word of relationism in the way they play football, which is what Luis Enrique's philosophy has been since he arrived at the club, it's Arsenal. They can kill the tempo. They can slow the game down. They're very good at that. Arsenal, for me, are the best team out of possession in the world. So when they lose the ball, you can't really exploit that. When they don't have the ball, they're so difficult to play against, all that kind of stuff, which PSG, I think, will have to find a way, but might struggle to find a way through. So plus set pieces, if you think about it. So I think it would be quite fascinating. I understand the contrast of people saying, oh, is the great attack against a great defense? Yeah, there's a bit of that. But Arsenal can attack too. Don't get it wrong. And as we saw for PSG in the second against Bayern, they can defend pretty well as well. So it would be great. I can't wait. I think if PSG win this one and go back-to-back and become only the third team in the last 40 years to go back-to-back with the Real Madrid from Zidane that we mentioned earlier, and obviously Milan and Arrigo Sacchi in 99 and 90, that takes you to another level. You're already in the conversation for greatest teams in Europe in the century, really. So that would be very special from a PSG point of view. After chasing that Champions League trophy for so long, to go back-to-back would be extraordinary, really. And for us PSG fans from Paris, it would mean the world, obviously. But if Arsenal have never won it, if they were to win the Premier League and do the double with the Champions League, it would be incredible as well, obviously. And I think they believe that. And I also think if they do win the Premier League first, which will be the case because the final is after the last game of the season, then I think almost that kind of not having any pressure for the Champions League final, because there's always a pressure, it's a Champions League final, but almost some sort of bonus that you can go and win, which I think would probably be a good thing for this Arsenal team and for Mikel Arteta. And you can almost go and say, okay, we've done the job, and always from the start of the season was to win the Premier League. After 22 years, we've done it, we've won that. It's a massive weight off our shoulders. Now, this is incredible game to play against the best team in the world. Let's go and enjoy it and see what happens. If we win, amazing. If we don't, then look at the season that we were had, and then we can build on that to go even stronger next season.
Yeah. Great analysis. Julien, thank you so much for that conversation.
Thank you for having me, man. I loved it.
Really appreciated it. Thanks for taking the time. And I was going to say one footnote on the Champions League final. As a Liverpool guy, I remember 2005 very well. And, anything can happen in the Champions League final, right?
That's very true.
If a Liverpool team, that was so far off that AC Milan team can win, then I think Arsenal definitely have more than a chance. Right. So looking forward to the final, looking forward to seeing your coverage of that final as well and hearing from you around that final. I think it's the Julien Laurens final. I think that's what they have to call it. Absolutely. The Laurensico. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Julien. I can't wait to read the book. Good luck with the release of the book. Great timing. Great to have that out before the World Cup, and good luck. Allez les Bleus. Good luck to France too.
Thank you very much.